Okay, this video is an introduction to SQL. So we are going to be using SQLite. So I'm going to talk a little bit just the difference between SQLite and some of the other kinds of database tools that you might see is that SQLite is specifically a in-memory on your hard drive database. It's not a over-the-network database, the way something like MySQL or PostgreSQL is. So it's really meant to be more like editing files on your file system, except that instead of reading and writing to files, you are accessing them through the SQL language, the standard query language. And this is a very common way to do it. A lot of, for example, like mobile apps, like Android apps or iPhone apps, will use SQLite to store their app data and access it as a table. So it's definitely something that is used often. So I'm going to load up SQLite 3, and I'm going to make a database, and we're going to call it StoreDB. And I'm kind of continuing on our idea about before. We're gonna create some tables with categories of products and products themselves and stores, and we'll experiment with that a little bit. So it says there's a .help for usage hints. So there's some stuff here that might be helpful for us to know about. Notably, there's this one that says .databases. So we could have multiple databases that we're connecting to potentially. Right now we just have this one, and you can see that it's being stored as a file in our file system, and that's what we're working with right now. So the first thing we need to do is create some tables. So SQL is a query language. It is a language for creating, reading, writing tables. It is not a traditional programming language. It does not really have notions of like while loops, for loops, classes, structured things like that. Everything is tables, and it's actually a relatively small number of legal statements. Another thing that's a little bit different about SQL is that it is not case sensitive. So in other words, create all caps like this is the same as create all lowercase. And you'll see both our book and some other places like to use all caps for SQL, and so I'm going to try and do that just to be consistent. But honestly, I may forget at various points. So you may see some mix of case there, but just know SQL doesn't care, or SQL. Also, it doesn't matter whether you call it SQL or SQL. So I'm going to use the syntax create table, and the first table we'll make is category, and this is going to be our categories of products. So it's going to have a name that's going to be a varchar, and it's going to have a descript. Let's just call it DSC, so I have to write less. That's also a varchar. And then I put a semicolon at the end, and it's done. So it just created a table. And if I want to look, I can use a special SQLite command, .schema, and it will show me the tables that exist right now. And there it is. But there's nothing in it at the moment. So the next thing that we'll want to do is insert some categories into our category table. And to do that, we need the insert command. So insert into category. See, I'm already going to mess this up. But again, the capitalization doesn't matter. Values. And then here I'm just going to put the name and the description in single quotes. So maybe one of the things is food. One of the categories is food. And I'll call the description things you eat. Yes, looks good.